Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Paul Golan. I am Executive Director of the Society for Humanistic Judaism, and this is our monthly series of rabbis and cantors from our movement called Life, the Universe, and Humanistic Judaism. This is the last one for our season because it's June and nobody does anything in the summer, I'm told. And it's been amazing. And all of our past videos are up on our YouTube channel. So if you search YouTube for Society for Humanistic Judaism, you'll find a playlist with our past programming. This is a program for members of SHJ affiliated communities and for SHJ independent members. And most of what we do is open to everybody, but that can't happen unless we get support from our members and donors. So this is kind of a thank you program just for you all, for your support, which we really appreciate, which allows us to share what we believe in with people who may really benefit from it. I'm going to spotlight our guest and welcome Rabbi Eva Goldfinger. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about Eva. Eva Goldfinger was born in post-war Hungary into a Hasidic Jewish family and was raised in Toronto. Her family are still ultra-religious, but her commitment to science and egalitarianism led her on a journey from religious to secular humanistic Judaism. Eva has a BA and MA in Jewish Studies from Hebrew College, Boston, and an MA in Rabbinic Studies from the International Institute for Secular Humanistic Judaism in Detroit, where she was ordained in 1986. She is on their faculty and is the director of the Canadian division. Rabbi Eva has been actively involved in building the movement and developing its philosophy and practices locally, nationally, and internationally, and is its Ontario governing official. She wrote the basic text for the humanistic Jewish movement and has created widely used publications and training manuals for its leaders and communities. Last December, she was awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award for the movement. Eva is also a rabbi at Oceania Congregation for Humanistic Judaism in Toronto and has traveled to serve congregations across North America. Eva has advanced training in many forms of therapy and is a psychological and philosophical counselor. She is also a specialist in interfaith, intercultural, and interracial counseling and helps break down barriers between individuals and communities by accepting and embracing diversity. So welcome. I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Paul. And hello, everybody. And thrilling to, well, I can't really see you all now that you're all teeny tiny, but I look forward after my talk to having the opportunity to talk with each other. So the topic for this particular session is called self-care, which we've learned from great Jewish sages and influencers. Now, the truth is, I'm not a great Jewish sage, but as a good therapist, I pride myself on having helped a lot of people find comfort, harmony, and self-love in their lives. It would take me years to cover all the wisdom about self-care from ancient, rabbinic, and modern Jewish texts. So I'll just pick and choose and share them with you. And I'm going to say this on purpose, randomly, and my daughter who's with us today is going to laugh at that. You might experience it as all over the place. That'll be interspersed with my ideas and teachings. Now, those of you who know me and have heard me lecture know that I like to begin by defining my terms. But today, in honor of self-care, I decided to loosen the boundaries of my neurotic ego, become more unbounded or carefree, and have a spiritual experience of mutual learning together with you. Now, Socrates, I admit he was not a Jew, said that above all else, know thyself. And based on his credo, Plato said that he's also not a Jew, that an unexamined life is not worth living for a human being. Also, some of you may remember that it was in 1969 that the song "To Know You Is to Love, Love, Love You," which was originally recorded in 1952 when I was just a baby by Perry Como, but it became popular in 69 from Bobby Vinton's recording. You're going to wonder why I brought this up, and you may think this is just a frivolous song of romance, but if you listen against the grain, you can hear the profound philosophical and psychological message behind the words. You cannot really love anything or anyone, most especially not yourself, without knowing and understanding it, never mind accepting it with all its glory and its flaws, for nothing and no one is perfect, not even the God in the Bible, as most of you know. And Jewish philosophy is fundamentally based in this idea of knowing, accepting, and improving. So now my talk today is about self-care, and care is an action. But actions cannot or do not happen without thoughts and feelings or emotions attached to them. So self-care cannot happen without self-love. Self-care is linked to an increased sense of self-worth and esteem. The time and energy put into creating a better quality of life for ourselves sends a powerful message to ourselves that we deserve love, care, and attention. And as we learn from Jewish scientific and psychological sources and evidence, this builds the foundations of compassion for others, also a necessary component of Tikkun Olam, the vital ethical principle of Judaism. Now, some of you may know the story of the Hasidic Rabbi Zusia, who stood in judgment before God, fearing he'd judge him as not being good enough, not being enough like the great Moses. But when he faced God, here is what he heard. Why were you not more like Zusia? And the lesson from this story is that our challenge in life is to respect, love, protect, and care for ourselves, to pay more attention to ourselves, to let go of judgments, criticisms, and comparisons, and replace them with patience, appreciation, and gratitude. Gratitude for what we are and what we have. Now, because people remember rhymes, I usually like to tell my clients, develop an attitude of gratitude. Kind of rhymes, sounds good. So now we have to remember that if we don't love ourselves, this leads to self-loathing, which leads to anxiety, and that leads to loss of self-confidence, as well as mental and physical health issues. So if you don't treat yourself well, it is unlikely that you will treat others well. Jack Kornfield, who is a Jewish Buddhist meditation teacher, taught us that anger and resentment prevent compassion for self and others. You have to balance self-care and care of others. Rabbi Sharon Cohen Anisfeld, who is the dean of Hebrew College, my alma mater in Boston, interpreted a line from a 16th century piyut, or liturgical poem, which said, "So take care of your soul, my friend. She is far more precious than gold," as a call on each of us to honor and protect the preciousness and brilliance of every human being. Now, in Leviticus 25, we can see that rest and care of other things and people is vital. We have what's called Shemitah, the seventh year where even the fields are to be left fallow. And we have the 50th year of the Jubilee, when all indentured servants are supposed to be released. So even in these fields, breaks are vital. In the Jewish calendar, it recognizes the need to rest from mourning and sadness. Right in the middle of the 7 weeks of Omer between Pesach and Shavuot, we have a pause that's called Lag BaOmer, a day of fun and celebration and barbecues. The rabbinic rules following the death of a loved one is to sit Shiva for 7 days in the presence of friends, family, and community to distract and to console us. Then to get up and return to our usual tasks, but once a year as a sign that we do not forget our loss, just deal with its diminishing weight. We light a Yizkor or memorial candle every year, and the religious people say Kaddish. No one can handle extended mourning. It takes a dramatic toll on our mental health and well-being. Now, as a humanist rabbi, I suggest to my clients that on anniversaries, they pull out old photos and recount fond, fun, and humorous memories of the deceased to overpower any negative memories. And you know what? No matter how much we love somebody, there always are some negative memories. Now, in Mishneh Brachot 2:6, there's a story about Rabban Gamliel, one of the great rabbis, who bathed on the first night after the death of his wife. His disciples said to him, "Master, have you not taught us that a mourner is forbidden to bathe?" He replied to them, "I'm not like other men. I am very delicate." So we can see that even one of the greats recognized that self-care comes before rules or above rules and regulations. Now, as humanists, when we don't take the Torah literally, which we don't, but read it against the grain, we can see some of the great wisdom that ultimately came with increased understanding of our ancient ancestors. Do you ever wonder what the meaning of light and darkness is in Genesis on day 1, and why the ancients considered it the most important thing to create? If darkness in Genesis 1 is, as described there, tohu vavohu, everything is in it and undifferentiated. In many Bibles, it's translated as chaos, but that's not its literal meaning. Or indistinguishable, thus not able to be understood. Then light is clarity, understanding, and wisdom. And of course, later rabbinic writings say that the Torah or wisdom was created before the world, but be that as it may. So after this, water, the source of sustenance, was created. Earth that grows greens and fruits were then created. All of these required for survival. Then the ancients realized that the sun enabled things to grow so that we can survive, but the moon at night during darkness gave everything and everyone the opportunity to stop and rest, a necessary component for rejuvenating and re-energizing ourselves to work and survive the next day. Note the importance attributed to Shabbat. In Deuteronomy 5:13, which in many ways is a repetition of Exodus, where the 10 Commandments were given, where neither we nor any of our family or even our male and female slaves are to do any work, we're told we have to rest. Clearly, our ancestors, even in ancient times, understood the need for the body and the mind to stop, to rest, to reflect, to rejuvenate, and to re-energize. For the religious, it also fulfills a spiritual need, which would be met by going to shul and praying and connecting to God, which they call dveikut, closeness, connection, and of course a sense of belonging to a community, which applies to us as well. For us, spiritual is loosening the boundaries of the ego. So it's the way in which we connect to other living things, to trees, mountains, rivers, for example. So a walk in nature is of great help and may also meet our recreational needs. Or connecting to other human beings, family, friends, and community, thus fulfilling our social needs as well. Let's also examine the first attempt at the creation of human beings, the creation of Adam, the earth creature, not Adam with a capital A. It's not the name of a man. It means creature of the earth. Adam was a single being with everything in it, male and female, as in Genesis 1:27. We know from the second version of the story in Genesis 2:18-23, which actually is a much older version, that this was not a great success until the separation of the earth creature into separate male and female components, where the other half could be, as they say in the Bible, ezer kenegdo, a helpmate opposite it, not beside it or attached to it, but where the other could see you, watch you, offer guidance and advice, and oppose you or push you to become the best self. So working together to benefit each other. Now back to the beginning. Self-care requires self-love, and that requires self-knowledge. To know ourselves, we need to do homework. Carefully examine our needs, wants, wishes, and goals to determine what it will take to become our true and best selves. That is step number one. And then step number two is creating a plan for our life that honors that vision, not others' expectations of us. Psychologists today indicate that there are 7 pillars of self-care. And I'm going to go in the order that they quote: mental, emotional, physical, environmental, spiritual, recreational, and social. But the order of execution depends on your needs and what you are currently lacking. So if you've got a wonderful social life, but are feeling bereft in other ways, work on the other stuff. Forget about concentrating on social self-care. Okay, you got that so far? Okay. I'm assuming you're nodding your heads. Now, in Deuteronomy 4:15, before Moses delivers the 10 Commandments to the children of Israel, he says something that appears to take precedence over the 10 Commandments. He says, "V'nishmartem me'od lenafshotechem," and take good care of yourselves. The rabbis have come to call this instruction, the primary instruction before the 10 Commandments, Shmirat HaNefesh, guarding or watching of the soul or the self. Nefesh is really yourself. The religious would say this means to follow the rabbinic laws that purport to interpret the Torah, and if you follow God's rules, you will be rewarded or not punished. And of course, this will be beneficial to you. But I would say this means to do a cost-benefit analysis before you take on any tasks, jobs, or risks to ensure that the benefits outweigh the costs. For example, smoking, wearing a mask during COVID, eating a healthy diet. I would also say that our needs need to outweigh our wants. For example, watching Netflix till 3 a.m. may be fun, but think of how exhausted and dysfunctional you're going to be the next morning when you have to start working at 9 a.m. Or eating 3 bowls of chocolate caramel ice cream. Yum. This may bring us a lot of pleasure if you like chocolate caramel or choose your own flavor. But think of what it will do to your diabetic count and thus your heart and your body. So, question is, does Shmirat HaNefesh apply to physical health over and above mental or spiritual health or the other 7 pillars? I'd like you to think about it, and we'll discuss it later. Now, all sorts of events can lead to imbalance and anxiety in our lives, which requires self-care. For example, relationship problems or breakdowns, financial problems, medical problems and pain, disabilities, lack of enough sleep, skipping meals or lack of sufficient nutrition, doing work you don't find fulfilling, working too hard, etc., etc. So, of course, we need to set boundaries. Keep in mind that exhaustion leads to shorter attention span, increased emotional volatility. You know how anxious and angry we get for no reason whatsoever when we're exhausted. Poor decision-making, burnout. How many of you have had burnout? Don't raise your hands because I can't see them, but Paul will be able to see them. Burnout leads to irritability, drinking, and I don't mean drinking water, trouble sleeping, headaches, lack of energy, and many of us, of course, have experienced that, especially those who have to deal with issues of others, like parents, doctors, nurses, teachers, social workers, therapists, rabbis, to mention just a few. We need to avoid burnout, not just to respond to it. So dismiss guilt for taking time to care for yourself. I don't know about you, but sometimes I feel that when the phone is ringing and I know it's somebody who needs me and I need to go to the bathroom, I'll put off going to the bathroom to answer the phone. I mean, it's ridiculous. Okay. The Black feminist activist and poet André Lorde, okay, she's not Jewish either, but we need to learn from the wisdom of others. The greatest Jewish sages have said that. She said that self-care is not self-indulgent, nor is it narcissistic behavior, but rather an act of self-preservation. Also keep in mind that we need to be an example and a teacher of self-care for others, and that begins with us. Protecting our well-being, pursuing joy. Stop doing what makes you unhappy, right? Gain the ability, the tools, and the resources to respond to periods of stress, and this may require professional care. Don't think that you're weak if you require professional care. If you take care of yourself, you can be there for others when they need us. Remember, our actions or lack of them have an impact not only on ourselves, but on others around us. In Leviticus 19:34, it says, love your neighbor as you love yourself. Self-care, self-love is required to protect others and the world around us, if that is true. By healing ourselves and our traumas, we contribute to the health and wellness of our communities, our family, and the world. Okay, so no pressure, maybe just a little bit. I don't want to cause any anxiety or distress here. Now, let me share some other tidbits of wisdom from our ancestors. From Pirkei Avot, which are called the Ethics of the Fathers. Literally, it means the chapters of the Fathers. 1:14, it says, Im ein anili mili. If I'm not for myself, then who will be for me? Uchsha'ani la'atzmi. But if I'm only for myself, ma'ani, then what am I? Ve'im lo achshav, and if not now, ematai. When? How many of you have heard this before? A lot of you. Okay. In 1:17, so in other words, don't put off what you need to do for yourself and others. Now is the time. 1:17 says, there is nothing better than silence. And 3:14 says, silence is a safety fence for wisdom, which I've always found to be very interesting. And then in 3.2, it quotes Lamentations, the book of Lamentations 3:28, which says, He who sits alone in meditative stillness receives reward for it, like reward for the study of Torah. So, what are the ancients telling us? Both meditation and learning can lead to enlightenment, and it's absolutely in our self-interest. So, those of you who think of meditation as huffy fluffy, remember that even Jewish people, never mind just Buddhists, think that meditation is very important. And you don't have to sit there and say Om, but just stop your mind and close your eyes and stop thinking. Just relax. Okay. 216 from Pirkei Avot, Rabbi Tarfon, also one of the greats. He said, Lo alecha hamlacha ligmor. It's not up to you to finish the task. He says, so don't be daunted by the enormity of the work that needs to be done to repair the world. But he says, but you are also not free to abstain from it. I'm sure that some of you have heard this expression before. Okay, let's look at Proverbs. Proverbs is from the books of wisdom. Proverbs 11:17 and 12:25 both say, if there is anxiety in a man's heart, let him quash it, whatever quash means. In Yoma, which is one of the Midrashic books from much, much later, 5a2, Rabbi Ami says, one who worries should banish his concerns from his thoughts, erase them. But Rabbi Asi, from the same period, the whole Talmud is about rabbis sitting at a table arguing with one another. They're Jews after all, right? But Rabbi Asi says he should tell others his concerns, which will lower his anxiety. So you can see, even in this early stage, so we're talking like 200 to 1 BCE to 100 CE. That's a couple of years ago. They knew that therapy and sharing with others, asking for help, these are all important elements of self-care. Remember, when you are not available, if you're just burnt out, you're closed or guarded, you're distracted, so easily preoccupied, distant, you're reactive, I've said that before, you're not able to listen, you have a limited view of the future, which we call pessimistic, you are risk averse, so you won't do the things that might be necessary to move your life forward. Very importantly, you're quick to blame either yourself or others. This is where I like to quote Will Durant. He's an American historian and a philosopher who said, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. So, for example, if you are worried that you're not going to go for your run in the morning, put your clothes out the night before, have them ready. And so when you wake up in the morning, you'll see your clothes and you're going to be less likely to say, no, I'm not getting out of bed, I'm too tired. Just little habits that you can develop that'll motivate you to do the things that you need to do. Okay. There are lots of things you can do for self-care. And you've heard this 1,000 times, and so I'm going to bore you and repeat it again. Baby steps. Develop an exercise habit doing what you and your body enjoy. Don't do an hour and a half of heavy workouts that you hate to do every single day. That's not going to bring your life joy. Yeah, it may help your heart rate, but it's not going to bring you joy, which is going to lower your heart rate. Okay. Work-life balance. Very, very important. Time for family, even family you don't always love. Did I just say that out loud? Okay, I didn't say that. Time to relax and unwind. Vital, vital. Again, find activities you like that give you pleasure. And yes, I'm going to say this out loud. Rabbi Goldfinger said, meaningful sex increases your happiness, your mental well-being, and your longevity. Science has proven that. Ask for help from friends, family, and colleagues. Therapists. Unloading is like squeezing orange juice out of an orange. If you left an orange for 2 weeks on your shelf, what would happen to it? It would rot. So you've wasted an orange and the juice in it. Same happens to your life. Get it off your chest. It doesn't show weakness. It shows determination to succeed faster. Focus on what really is important and useful. So don't do a bunch of things that aren't essential. Do the useful and the important things. These cause you to be more available, so open, receptive, considerate, adaptable, willing, tuned in, aware, future-oriented, optimistic, connected, and responsive. Yes, this is repetitive, but we say in psychology that when something is important, keep repeating it like a habit until it becomes part of how you think. Now, when you're there and you help others, they become more available to contribute. So what you're doing when you're helping others is increasing the human performance of Tikkun Olam. So instead of continuing, so what I'm trying to say is your legacy of Tikkun Olam is increased exponentially when you do self-care, and therefore you can help others and then they can help others. Now, instead of continuing to talk at you, I would like to open the floor. So, Paul, if you would take me off speaker view and put us on gallery view.
Yep.
Then one at a time, raise your hand. And when Paul sees your hand, I would like, because I'm not going to be able to see you all, but take me off.
You are.
Oh, yeah, but you are. Take
Okay.
us all off and put us all on gallery view. So take off this Spotifying.
I did. If you go to the top right where there's little boxes that say view, you can switch.
Gallery. Oh, yeah. You see, you have to teach an old crow how to do stuff.
Well, I'm going to jump in and then.
Well, hang on a second. Let me tell you what I'm looking for.
Okay.
He'll call on you, and I'm not going to be checking Q&A, so don't bother using the Q&A. I'd like you to share with all of us what you do that works for you for self-care and self-love.
So I wanted to jump in with a question, but I will answer that one, which is that I watch Netflix till 3 a.m. and eat bowls of ice cream. So I feel very seen, and also I'm going to check my apartment for hidden spy cams that you may have placed in my apartment. It felt very personal when you said that. I was wondering how you knew that about me. I'm kidding. It's usually just till 2 a.m. But I really loved this presentation, and I want to get from you the whole list of all the quotes that you were quoting. It is helpful. I think, like everyone maybe, I really struggle with feeling that self-care is indulgence and not a necessity the way that you expressed it to be. So that piece is really helpful. You said it's self-preservation. I really love that quote, and it's not indulgence because it often does feel that way. An analogy I often keep in mind, my wife is a flight attendant, right? So when you're on a flight, they always tell you to put the mask on yourself before you assist others who need it, right? You can't assist the other person if you're passing out from lack of oxygen. So, but I think it's really challenging for folks to do when it does feel like self-care is self-indulgence. So I appreciate that. And I guess my question to you, and we can ask for feedback first and then come back to it, but how do you determine when you actually have a choice, right? You talked about doing unfulfilling work. A lot of people can't, don't really have a choice but to do unfulfilling work, or all kinds of repercussions may happen for them and their family. So how do you determine when you have a choice? Do you want to put that on hold and go back to the questions, or
No,
you
no,
want?
I'm happy to answer that. That's a very good question. And by the way, I was going to use the example of the mask, but I thought, no, enough with the non-Jewish stuff. I said this was going to be Jewish sexist, so I'm glad you brought that up. So how do we find, remember I used the word balance. When your work that's required from your perspective to, let's say, support your family, put your children through school, or whatever it is that's required, then stop putting in 13 hours a day doing it. Make it clear to the work that you're doing that you're going to put in the regular work hours, and find things outside of your work life that give you pleasure, because that will help to balance giving you pleasure. So you're not making as much money as you did before. Usually you will, but spend less on clothing and eating out. Rather spend it on traveling to Timbuktu, where you've wanted to go, and take the family with you, so that you're balancing family and social and travel and pleasure. So you balance it with things that do bring you pleasure, even if you have to work. And I find that it's not always true that they have to do that job. They're just too scared. They don't have the courage to get help looking for work that could be more fulfilling, for fear that if they lose it, or that they won't be able to do it. When you get the confidence and the encouragement to keep that job, don't quit, keep that job, but don't stop looking for something else that's more fulfilling, and balance it with pleasurable other things that you're doing. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Elka has her hand up.
Alcala.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it's been ages since anyone called me that. That's really wonderful. Thank you for that. All the memories pouring back now, yeah, from people are long, long gone. Yeah. Um, I put my hand up before you posed your question, so I want to go with my comment then, which does also relate in a way to your question, which I will answer. And that was your definition of spirituality. This has troubled me I'm 83. I just had my 83rd birthday, so
Happy birthday.
yeah. And I have never been able to come up with a satisfactory secular definition. And that one, loosening the boundaries of ego, is so perfect and wonderful. So thank you for that.
Do
And
not give me the credit for it. If I weren't 73, I would remember the name of my professor at University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, who actually came up with that.
that I'm going to take credit for. No, okay, but it's really wonderful, and that relates back to behavior that often is marked as selfish, but to me it has never been selfish. Anything we do because we believe that's the thing that is going to make us happiest, most satisfied, most fulfilling. It doesn't matter what it is. So by nature, we're selfish. It doesn't mean anything, and it's not necessarily for me a bad thing. So I never feel guilty about doing nice things for me. I never feel I have to give a reason. I just do it because that's what I want to do. And I don't feel I have to justify it to anyone. I never have. And I don't put down compliments. There are things I can do and I do well. There are things I cannot do and I don't do them well. And there are things I could do well and I don't. And all those are realities. And so the things that I'm really good at, I enjoy, and I do not put down when you tell me, hey, that was wonderful, whatever you did. So that's good. And I have actually been to Timbuktu.
Thank you very much, Alka. I am glad you brought up one thing, and that's the word selfish. People think of selfish as bad. And I always say one of my fundamental principles in psychology is every single solitary thing a person says and does is self-motivated. Selfish is a positive thing. If you don't take care of yourself, you become a burden on others. But selfish is not the same as self-centered. Self-centered means you only think of yourself and you don't think of others. So thank you for bringing up that word, because that kind of added to the whole concept here. Yes, I'm ready for more sharing.
Someone just want to put their hand up or just unmute? Steven.
How do you establish a boundary between self-care, self-love, and being selfish to the point where, like you're saying, self-centered? How do you establish a boundary for that?
If you have, remember I said the balance between caring for yourself and caring for others, but caring for yourself has to come first, because if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of others. The boundary is that when you take care of yourself, you also have to make time to take care of others. People who do not have empathy, who do not understand other people's needs, who do not pay attention to other people's needs, are self-centered and narcissistic. That is a mental illness, and that does not help us live our lives well. So the boundary is to balance caring for yourself and taking care of others, paying attention to others' needs as well. So do some volunteer work. Polish your own shoes.
Other thoughts, questions? You can ask it like this: I have a friend who, and then we won't know it's about you.
Remember, we don't expect you to be perfect. But what do you do for self-care? What do any of you do to make yourself feel good? Yeah, David.
Jody.
Oh, Jody was first? Go ahead.
Hello. So I practice a lot of self-care. Kind of focus a lot of my energy on that actually. So you were talking earlier about burnout, and that is something that I have experienced, and it's not fun. And it takes a while. Well, it took a while for me to get from burnout to practicing self-care. And so the things that I've done, I do a lot of art. I find it very meditative. Um, I take a lot of naps. That might be my favorite self-care action. A lot of guided meditation and organizing things. I somehow find that very enjoyable. I have a lot of hobbies, so I just, instead of them being all over, I try to put them into small spaces. And I find that like relaxing, calming. It allows me time to really think. And there's something I learned recently. It's called like hard fascination and soft fascination, which I found really interesting. Which I was looking at soft fascination, which is, well, I'll say first, like hard fascination is things like watching televisions, Netflix until 3 in the morning, or scrolling through your phone. Whereas soft fascination is things where you have like where you can, let's say, going out in nature, and going for a hike on like a path, like not a crazy hike, but like a stroll on a path, um and having that time to think. So we can be around nature, we can experience that. It's meditative, and we have time to like think about what's going on, and that's soft fascination. And I found it really interesting because for me, also being in nature, I find that self-care as well. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you for that great
Thank
talk
you.
today.
Thank you, Jody. What? Your mother does great talks.
There are some nice descriptions in the chat about how folks do self-care. Carol says being outdoors and active, hiking, kayaking, time alone, curled up reading for however long I feel like it, or my eyes will stay awake, will stay open. Phyllis says whitewater kayaking, travel, music, and dancing. Cannabis, it's legal here. And sanghas? What is sanghas? I feel like I should know it. SAN. Yeah,
Meditation groups, different meditation groups.
great. Okay, I'll check it out. I've heard of cannabis. Um, Steve says going to the gym, seeing my girlfriend in New York City, and seeing my grandchildren. Lovely. Rachel.
And David had his hand up as well.
Oh, sorry, David, then Rachel.
Oh, okay.
So I love getting into nature on my bike. And although I live pretty close to downtown Toronto, actually, I can be very quickly in some lovely ravines and safe riding, separated bike paths. So I do that. And also I really enjoy a good food too, in moderation.
Oh, is that why you never come to dinner at my house? Because you like good food?
Oh, I'll come. It's a long way for me, but I'll cycle up if I need, or take TTC. Take care.
Rachel?
I had a question for Rabbi Eva in the chat. I was wondering, I was trained by, I put this in the chat, but you probably didn't see it. I was trained by Yetta Bernhardt on the art and practice of self-care way back in the 70s, and I wondered if you were familiar with her work.
If I am, it isn't the name I'm familiar with. It could just be the influence of her work, because I've studied self-care for a very long time.
Okay, yeah, she has a ton of books, and I had the privilege of working with her directly, personally, and it was just wonderful. And I appreciate that you're doing this, and it's really enjoyable.
In the 70s, I was a pisher, so for me,
I know, you're younger than I am. I'm 80.
Wow, you don't look 80. You look wonderful for somebody.
Thank you.
I do want to read a comment from JW, who says that reading books from my SHJ reading list and events like this one. So I have to thank you for that shout out, of course. And Elka, you have something else you want to add?
Yeah, I think I'm speaking maybe more.
You're muted.
Maybe that was the good news. I think I'm speaking perhaps more for the women than for the men in our society. We have tend to have been brought up either overtly or covertly with the message that we put everybody ahead of us. Everybody matters more than we do. We're the ones that stay home with the kids. We're the ones, when we go for jobs, that's what's the person hiring is always considering. How likely are you have to be the caregiver for the family and so on. And so I think what is really important is taking the actual time to not just think about ourselves, but very consciously do something special and repeatedly for ourselves. And I'm thinking for specifically what I went through with my husband died in 2015, and we'd been married for 42 years, and it was an extraordinary marriage. It was really wonderful. But for the last about 20 years, he was ill. It was like almost every year, 3 more illnesses were added on, not replacing. So by the end, like absolutely everything I did was focused on him, everything. And I had lost me. And so when he died, what I did, I spent the next year, after his death, actually planning something extraordinary for me, something that was so much me that is putting me back into the world as a person with an identity as me, that I am back. It was a very, very expensive, completely private, completely special trip for 3 weeks to Japan. It was totally over the top, completely. And it was my way of saying, I am that important. I am as important as all that I have given. I am also worthwhile. And So we each find the thing that sort of matters to us, but so that's sort of a question to ask yourself. In your entire life, have you done something extraordinarily over the top for you? And I'm saddened about how many people end up telling me they haven't.
Thank you. We need to really be careful to separate the genders that way, because men spend their lives often in those days working 8 to 7, feeling that it's their responsibility to support their family, etc. So they're also don't think that they deserve to do all those wonderful things. But yes, we need to do wonderful things. Any new voices? None of you asked what I do for self-care.
What do you do for self-care?
Oh, you're asking?
Yeah.
You're not going to laugh, you promise?
Of course.
During COVID, when weddings and stuff were cut back, I started to watch Hallmark movies because they were incredibly relaxing. I knew the next line they were going to say. I knew how it was going to end. There was no stress whatsoever. 2 hours of relaxation and then 2 more hours for the next Hallmark movie. So yes, that's what I did.
I will put in a plug for hobbies also, because as you say that, I remembered that during the deepest part of the pandemic, the first year before there was a vaccine, I got back into stamp collecting, and it is meditative. It is separate from the everyday by so much. There is a community of people who also do it that you can connect to, which is they're non-judgmental. For the most part, politics doesn't come up. It's purposely avoided. And it is really a separation between regular life and something that I just have for myself. So I think it applies pretty much to any hobby that you might do as a way to get out of your day-to-day. Ellie or Eli?
Yeah, hey, I'm Eli. And I just want to my biggest consistent self-care act is that about an hour before I would like to be in bed, I hand my phone to my spouse, who hides it somewhere on their person so I can't get at it. And the difference that having that, it's like 45 to 60 minutes every night before bed, when I have no screens in front of me, is hugely beneficial to my sleep. So that's my I resonated a lot with other stuff that people were saying about, especially about nature and hobbies, but that one has made the hugest difference for me.
And for that we say amen amen, let it be so. There's one other thing we ought not to do if we want to do self-care today, and that is do not watch the news.
I was just thinking that.
Not Israeli news and not American news and not Canadian news. It's just going to drive you crazy.
And it is so hard not to do, because I feel like it's important to be an informed person. And I recognize it every time I open that New York Times website and scroll through it and get more and more depressed and feel like I have less and less control over events in the world. And I always ask myself, why am I here? And I'm envious of the uninformed, which unfortunately gets to pick our presidents, because I feel like there is a value in knowing what the hell is going on. But I totally hear you, and I do feel it every time. It's very difficult, but I can't break the idea that it's good to be informed. So I guess I'll go back, before you say it, I'll go back to balance, right? Finding the balance between staying informed and that, or being obsessed with getting every bit of news possible. That I do try to avoid, but it's really difficult. Any final comments before I wrap up? Oh, anyone else want to say something? Well, I will just say thank you so much. This was so helpful, and I feel better now than I did when we started, which I think is the goal of pretty much everything we try to do at SHJ. You know, I was just talking about this last weekend. Why do we do anything? Why do we do Shabbat services? You know, why do we do life cycle events? It's to feel better afterwards than we did coming into it, and I definitely do. So thank you so much for that. We will pick this up again in the fall. In the meantime, I don't know if you saw it. Hopefully you're all getting my emails. We are launching a weekly secular Talmud study class. We've had huge interest. Next Tuesday, we're doing an orientation class for people to determine whether they want to be in the ongoing course. So I welcome you to join that. Otherwise, make sure you continue to receive our emails to learn about other upcoming programs. But in the meantime, enjoy your summer. And Rabbi Eva, thank you again so much for this.
Will you send me the list of posts in the chat?
Sure.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Have a great summer, and thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.